Finance Management Committee. I'm Councilmember Weezar. We've been joined by Councilmember Price, Councilmember Harris Dawson, and Councilmember Blumenfield. We'll move on the multiple item comment cards. There are none. Item number 3, the bicycle parking ordinance amendments. We will continue with no objections. Item number 8, we will continue to a date uncertain. That is a category exemption for 1529 through 1543 West Olympic Boulevard and 940-954 South Union and 943 South Graton. With no objection, item number 8 continued. Item number 4, we will approve.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On item number 4, I do have an amendment.
Oh, sure. Okay. Go right ahead.
Okay, so on item number 4, there was two parking spots were taken out. Guest spots were taken out, but it was, and a gate was added. This is a project in my district, and that had been agreed to with the community. Anyway, I want to make sure that those guests, we'll let the gate go, but we want to make sure the guest parking spots get put back in. And I guess it was done as a condition of the track map, which probably shouldn't have been done anyway, so I want to make sure we undo that. So my recommendation is to add in the 2 guest parking spots back into
Okay.
the project.
So, Councilman, we're discussing item 4, right?
Correct.
Yes. So this one is a general plan amendment for a 22 small lot project in CD3. And I think the councilman is speaking about the parking requirements for the guest parking, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And the parking requirements were changed at the end to remove the 2 guest parking spots. The community has concerns about that. I wanted to basically undo that and make sure that those guest parking spots are still included.
Okay. So I presume that was a queue condition as part of the report that planning prepared?
So, Councilmember Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office, just for the record, item 4 has been called. Are there any comment cards that need to be considered?
There are no comment cards.
Okay. Do you wish for planning to present the item?
Yes. Can you just read that into the record, please, Mr. Mejia?
Yes. So item 4, Councilman, again, this is a general plan amendment for a project associated with a zone change for a 22 small lot subdivision in CD3.
Okay, can you present this item, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, council members. Courtney Shum with City Planning. The case before you is a residential project in Reseda along Tampa Avenue, just south of Sherman Way in Council District 3. The applicant is proposing to construct 22 small lot homes on an approximately 1.5 acre site. On May 25th, 2017, the City Planning Commission recommended approval of a general plan amendment from low residential to low medium 1 residential, a zone change from RA1 Rio to TQRD31 Rio, and the removal of a 25-foot building line along Tampa Avenue. The City Planning Commission also approved a zoning administrator's actions to allow over and height fences and walls within the front, side, and rear yards of the proposed development. As mentioned during the commission meeting, 2 conditions of approval were modified, requiring a pedestrian gate to be installed along the residential street abutting the site to the west, and for the 2 proposed 14 guest parking spaces to be removed to make room for additional common open space. None of these actions have been appealed. However, members of the community have expressed concern with the shortage of available street parking in the immediate area and the need to provide more guest parking on the project site. The recommended GPA zone change and building line removal will facilitate the production of much-needed for-sale housing within the Reseda community and the City of LA as a whole. The site is appropriate for a lower-intensity multifamily zoning and land use, given its potential to serve as a transitional buffer between the adjoining single-family neighborhood and the higher-intensity commercial and multifamily uses along Sherman Way. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield, you want to repeat your proposed amendment?
So the amendment is to add back in the guest parking spots that were removed by the commission.
Okay.
And I guess there's two ways to do that. I was just suggesting undoing the action of the commission.
Okay.
But I'm open to either way.
Our, Courtney Shum Planning, our suggestion would be to add language to the queue condition. I have some language drafted that I can read.
And why is that better than doing it, just undoing the action?
Well, under the conditions of approval, those would be under the authority of the City Planning Commission, because those actions that are regulated under the conditions of approval were not appealed. That wouldn't be opened up to being changed. What would be before Plumbing Council are the Q conditions and the T conditions, because those are part of the legislative action.
Do we not have the authority to change?
Nick Hendricks, Senior City Planner. What's before you is the Q conditions of the zone change itself, because there was no appeal of the actual other entitlement packages. So what you can do is add the Q to undo the other conditions that specifically pertain to the parking conditions. So we're basically going from the 12th back to the 14th with the modified zone change. Because the map's not before this body, and the other entitlements are not as well.
Okay, I'm happy to do it the way that you're suggesting, because it goes to the end result. I don't quite get why we couldn't do it the other way. But
Well, if my understanding is...
my desire is the end, not the means, but go
Right.
ahead.
The action of the conditions of the City Planning Commission are not before this body, is that correct?
That is correct.
So what's before the body is the general plan amendment, the zone change, and so that's what's before you, so you could make those changes today. There would have to, I think your question may be leading to, then how do we rectify those conditions that are still there as part of the City Planning Commission? So would those go back and just, I think that's probably the question I think that you may be
Yeah, no,
asking is everything needs to be clear in a line? You want all integration, so right up here is the general plan and the zone change are going to be clear. You want to make sure that there's conditions that are out there as part of the map and other things. You want to make sure that those are gone back in and are changed to conform with this new
With the new condition.
queue.
Right.
Correct, and also just to elaborate on that, so after this process occurs today, there'll be substantial conformance sign-off, so that the original proposed parking was 14, which is what you're suggesting to go back to. So when we come back after the decision, there'll be a substantial conformance finding that we'll make that will show that the conditions that's changed here, as modified here, demonstrate substantial conformance with the original decision-making process.
Great. So we don't need to do any special instruction to
No.
do that. That automatically will happen
Correct.
based on the action that we take.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. That's all
Okay.
of all of what was just said. That's my motion.
So we will approve this item
With the revised.
with the amendment as proposed by Mr. Blumenfield.
With
Any
the revised
objections?
Q condition, Council.
Pardon me?
With the revised Q condition.
The
as to
revised Q
yes part.
conditions, yeah. Any objections? Seeing none, so ordered.
Thank you.
Number 6 has some cards, so we'll hold that. Number 7, we will approve on consent. That's the CEQA findings report from North Valley APC draft ordinance on a zone change and building line removal for the property located at 9814 North White Oak Avenue. So we will approve that item on consent. Item 7. Item number 1, if we could go to that, please. This is the report from the Director of Planning, Vince Bertoni.
Yes, thank you, Weezard, members of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. Vince Bertoni, Director of Planning. Just real quick, tomorrow in City Council will be the adoption of the Community Plan for San Pedro, which is a significant milestone for our community plan program. We're very excited about it. This committee recommended approval last week, so it'll be, if the council adopts it tomorrow, then just the next step will be for the ordinances to be prepared for form and legality to come back to the City Council. So again, we're excited. This is another community plan that we're getting adopted on top of recently the West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Lamert plans being adopted, and as well as upcoming adoptions for South and Southeast Los Angeles. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will receive and file item number 1. Thank you very much, Mr. Bartoni. Item number 6, draft ordinance for a new R1 subzoning. Can you read that into the record? I have a wrong reading.
Sure.
Here, Mr.
Item 6, Councilman, this is a report from the Planning Department. It's a draft ordinance to create a new subzone of the R1 single-family zone in Castle Heights.
Okay, thank you. So, 1 second. We were going to approve this item on consent. We have 2 cards here, Andres Molest and Betty Tang. Our intent is to approve it on consent. Do you still wish to speak? Okay, all right. So they're waiving their cards, Betty Tang and Andres Molest. So item 6, we will approve on consent without objection. Seeing no objection, so ordered. Thank you. Item number 2, if that could be read into the record, please.
Sure. Item 2, Councilman, this is a city attorney prepared ordinance as it relates to certified farmers markets and where they are allowed either by right or through a discretionary process.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Phyllis Nathanson, Senior City Planner with the Planning Department. This ordinance is intended to facilitate certified farmers markets being more widely available throughout the city. It's in conformance with our plan for Healthy Los Angeles, and to address the problem, or to help address the problem of food deserts in certain parts of the city. Currently, the code provides for discretionary approval for certified farmers markets in the A, C, M, and P zones, and in parking lots of churches and other institutions in R zones. And they're not otherwise allowed in R zones. And the ordinance would allow these certified farmers markets as a public benefit in the A, C, M, or P zones, as long as the farmers markets were in conformance with specified performance standards. There would not be a discretionary action. And in R zones, it would allow farmers markets by zoning administrator's determination, a discretionary action. And they would have to be in compliance with minimum performance standards, but the zoning administrator could add additional conditions.
Good afternoon, council members. Oscar Medellin, City Attorney's Office. Our office has submitted its transmittal report to you, which you have in your packets today. The report summarizes the changes that we incorporated into the ordinance based on your previous instructions. From our consultation with planning staff, it is our understanding that there may be 2 additional amendments to the ordinance that were not part of the original instructions. Those additional amendments relate to the annual review requirement and the acceptance of electronic benefits transfer card payments at farmers markets. So if instructed to make additional amendments today, we would be prepared to transmit a revised ordinance with the following revisions, which I will read into the record. 1, to eliminate the annual review requirement under Section 1224X, Subdivision 6E of the ordinance by removing that requirement in its entirety. And 2, to add a new requirement under Section 1224X, Subdivision 6C9 and Section 1400, Subdivision 11A10, which states, electronic benefits transfer EBT card payments shall be accepted at the certified farmers market. A food and nutrition service FNS number issued by the United States Department of Agriculture shall be provided on the application as proof of EBT card acceptance. Again, should you instruct us to incorporate these additional amendments into the ordinance, we can submit these revisions today. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, we have 2 public comment cards, John Edwards and Doug Haynes.
question for the staff.
Up there, up in that microphone. Yeah, there you go.
So, good afternoon, Chairman Weissach, committee members. My name is John Edwards. I'm the president and CEO of Raw Inspiration. We're the largest farmers market organization in Los Angeles. And I'm here to support the draft ordinance, including the 2 new amendments that I just heard. We've been accepting EBTs for some time now. So the only slight problem we have is we do have one market in Los Angeles in CD3 that goes past 7 o'clock in the evening. So I'm not sure what we do about that one, if we can get a variance or talk with Councilmember Blumenfeld's office to see what we can do with that, but you probably know we do that with Westfield in Topanga. So apart from that, I fully support the ordinance, and I see my time is running out, so I support it. I just have that problem with the 7 o'clock shuttle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Doug Haynes?
Good afternoon. My name's Doug Haynes. With all due respect, I think this is a really bad idea, and I don't even understand why it's necessary. In 2016, the Office of Zoning Administration came out with their list of permitted uses in various zones, and said that farmers markets are permitted in all zones with the CUP. So if that's the current standard right now, and I don't understand, Phyllis commented that it's not allowed in residential zones, but that contradicts exactly what's been stated previously. To have it by right in commercial zones and other zones that are adjacent to residential zones sets up a situation where you have a clear conflict where you would intrude into the peace and quiet of the people who live in those areas. And as an example, we have the LA City College swap meet, which is in the PF zone in a parking lot surrounded by residential. It's extremely disadvantaged to the people there. It's morphed into a situation where even the applicant has acknowledged that it attracts, it's a magnet for nuisance. You need to tightly regulate these. They're not like pumpkin patches and Christmas tree stakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll, any questions? Mr. Bloomfield?
A couple of questions for staff. One, with regard to what we heard from our first speaker, is there a way, how would we go about if we wanted to allow a farmer's market that's been operating well to go the extra hour? Is there a way to grandfather them in through this ordinance, or what would be the process post this ordinance?
The process, my understanding, would be a zone variance, which would be burdensome, I believe. And I don't really know, maybe we could ask the city attorney what the possibility is for grandfathering in an existing farmer's market.
Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office. Farmers markets don't really have vested rights the way others might, because they have to get regular approvals and permits. So it's really a policy matter as to whether those hours of operation that are in the ordinance right now are the ones that you want to have apply to farmers markets generally. Otherwise, the variance process will be what's available.
Is there a way that we can have a more council-driven discretionary process, so that, you know, if we want to vary the hours by a couple of hours for a particular farmer's market with a history, that it could be done by a council action rather than going through a burdensome process?
Currently, that language isn't in the ordinance. If, I suppose a discretionary process could be added for modifications to what is allowed that would be short of a variance. We'd have to sort of conceive of what that process would be. I mean, this is a legislative matter, so certainly that's an option.
So I guess I would add in an amendment or a motion that we would get a report back, or we would ask for the city attorney to draft up a discretionary process whereby council districts could modify the hours through a perfunctory process.
So the process that I think you're thinking of would be like a zoning administrator's determination So maybe, as Adrian was
I'd
suggesting.
I was actually thinking something where the council office can sign off on it. That's always my preference.
So we can look into that and work with planning on that. Just to clarify, is that a change that you would like to have made before this goes to City Council? In which case, we will need to come back with an ordinance with that language because those changes aren't something that were discussed and have been viewed by the committee. Part of the reason we were able to read those other into the record is because we were able to prepare them ahead of time and present them to this committee prior to public comment. We'll need to bring that ordinance back here or have it go to council and have a limited public hearing at council.
You're saying
Let
that
me, yeah, I think they're not really I mean, they're changing the hours. I think if we often make amendments here that we are not aware of and we move forward, I just don't see that raises to the level of us having to have to come back for those.
It can go to council with those changes. We'll just have to have a limited public hearing
Okay.
for that at council, just because that process hasn't really been expressly devised yet.
You'd still make your amendments.
Yeah, so I still want to make the so I'll make that amendment that we do have a process that we can vote on in council, and if that requires a limited public comment at that point, so be it. So move that motion. Then I have two questions not related to that at all. I was a little confused looking through it about the parking issues. It's when it comes to a farmer's market that's in a parking lot, is it saying 80% has to be for other parking? I saw what I thought were contradictory things in the report, so I just wanted to ask directly, what is the ratio percentage for parking and why?
Yeah, so there's a limit of utilization of the parking lot. It's limited to 80% of the parking lot can be used by the certified farmers market. And the remaining 20% has to be set apart with safety barricades. And so that 20% of parking is retained.
Okay, and that was a change, because when I was looking at the report, like in November of 2015, it looked like it was 20% to 50%?
Yes, there were various changes along the way, changes suggested by representatives from different council offices. So this new ordinance is a representative of various input from various offices.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I don't really have no idea what's good and bad, but as long as it's been thought of, and now I understand what the answer is. And then thirdly, the other thing that confused me, did we remove the requirements for porta potties or toilets? And why?
It was originally in there, obviously, as a convenience. Most farmers markets that you see in public right-of-way, they don't have those porta potties, and it was thought that it was an additional burden for these certified farmers markets, and we wanted to facilitate their being more available, so we wanted to remove any burdens that we didn't think were absolutely necessary.
Seems kind of necessary. But don't we have that burden with, even like a food truck has to have a porta potty nearby?
That I don't know. Maybe city attorney knows.
Adrian Corsani, City Attorney's Office, per the county's health guidelines, any establishment, including a food truck, has to be within a certain distance of a restroom facility where hand washing is available. But that's related to the county's guidelines. I don't know how that applies to farmers markets. And certainly nothing in our ordinance exempts anybody from any requirements from, the county or state regulations. But I'm not sure what those are with reference to porta potties. The focus for food trucks is really hand washing and sanitation when it comes to the county's requirements.
Those requirements are still on those requirements pertain to a farmer's market as well?
I'd have to look at the county regulations, but I think they're general requirements that have to do with food preparation. So I suppose it depends on if the food is being prepared on site, what the access is to hand washing stations, and if that's something that is provided in another way, not necessarily through a porta potty or that kind of thing. But I would have to look into it for a more certain answer.
I guess I'll just put a pin in it. I'm concerned about this particular thing, but I don't know enough about it, so I'm just going to put a pin on it and not raise any further objections, and I'll talk with you guys offline and try to learn more about it before it comes to full council.
Okay, thank you. So, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we would move to move the item incorporating the amendments that were made by staff to require farmers markets to accept EBT, et cetera, and to remove the annual review, and also to include Mr. Blumenfield's amendment on the hours. Any objections? Seeing none, so ordered. Staff didn't email it to me, and I don't know. Item number 5.
Item 5, Councilman, this is a report from the Planning Commission. It's a resolution and a general plan amendment for a 21-unit condo project and a 54-unit apartment building in CD 7.
Okay, do you have staff to present briefly on this item, please?
Hello, council members. My name is Kevin Jones. I am a senior city planner for the Project Planning Bureau and your Valley offices. The major presenter today will be Laura Frazen-Steele, who is a city planner in the northwest quadrant of the Valley, and that will be making the significant presentation on this project. Of note, please note that this was presented to the Plum Community Committee back on April 25th, 2017, and it is here for a consideration of revisions to the action that was taken on April 25th. And with that, I'll let Laura Frazen-Steele make her presentation.
Good afternoon, council members. Laura Frazen-Steele, city planner, city planning. The proposed project is located at 9433 Sepulveda Boulevard and 15500 Plummer Street on an L-shaped, approximately 3-acre property with mixed zoning and land use designations in the Mission Hills Panorama City North Hills Community Plan area. The property fronting on Sepulveda is zoned R3-1 and designated medium residential density, while the property fronting on Plummer is zoned RA-1 and designated low-density residential. What is currently before you on the agenda is a project that was most recently acted on by the City Planning Commission on its May 11th, 2017 meeting. And at this time, I will present details and technicalities of the project. The project before you totals 75 multifamily residential dwelling units comprised of a 54-unit, 3-story, 45 feet in height apartment building on the R3 zone portion of the site fronting on Sepulveda Boulevard. The remainder L-shaped portion of the site would consist of 21-unit detached residential condominiums spread throughout the west side of the parcel. The 21 detached 3-story, 36 feet in height residential condominiums include common open space park areas, individual private yards, and interior common access area for vehicle entry to the condominium units, and individual garages with 2 parking spaces for each unit, driveway spaces, and guest spaces for a total of 69 parking spaces. At this time, a recommendation is being made to modify the project to a general plan amendment from low residential and medium residential to low medium to residential over the entire approximately 3-acre site, a zone change from RA1 and R31 to TQ RD 1.5-1, removal of a 22-foot building line originally established by ordinance, and site plan review for the development of 50 or more units. Today, what we are recommending is to modify the project to provide 75-unit detached residential condominiums, 3 stories, 41 feet in height, 4 to 6 unit townhome-style buildings that are spread throughout the entire site. The development includes rooftop decks, open space park areas, and an interior common access area for vehicles. The unit sizes would range from approximately 1,190 to 1,390 square feet and include 2 to 3 bedroom units. The project would include a total of 169 parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else to add? No? So we'll go to public comment. First is Humberto Quintana from Council District 7.
Humberto Quintana, Planning Director with the Office of Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and members of this committee. The 7th Council District requests that the Plum Committee remand the case to the City Planning Commission and the Mayor for recommendation of a modified 75-unit project with general plan amendment for the entire site and necessary zone change for the property located at 9433 Sepulveda Boulevard and 1508 Plummer Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Applicant Randy Bach.
My name is Randy Bach. I am the applicant. I have submitted a request for extension of time that you have before you. I am requesting that the project be remanded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with Council District 7's request to remand back to CPC and to modify zone change, we'll remand this back to CPC. Is that correct, Mr. Mejia?
Yes, and also the GPA and back to the mayor as well.
Okay, we'll incorporate that. The applicant has requested or submitted a extension of time. Is that superfluous, or that's necessary
something
for
that
the?
they process through the city clerk's
But we don't need
office.
that to remand, do we? Or
The zone change will expire, and so
I got it.
because the GPA is being extended, they're extending the time for consideration of the zone change as well.
okay, thank you. All righty. So, any objections? Seeing none, so ordered. I believe that's the last item except for public comment. Is that correct, Mr. Mejia?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll go to public comment. Ruby, Joanna, Cynthia, Perrick, and Herman each have 1 minute each, please. Go right ahead.
California's oil and gas industry provides 360,000 well-paying middle-class jobs. And these aren't just your run-of-the-mill temp agency fly-by-night under-the-table gigs that so many of us Angelinos have been corralled into the past 20 years. These are stable, reliable, family-supporting careers. These are types of jobs that were the bedrock of our nation's economy in the golden era. And now, with the setback, we're talking about eliminating them. The message that we be sending to our communities and our neighborhoods of LA is that good-paying jobs aren't trendy enough to drive policy-making, and the needs of the family are secondary to fashionable politics. If not for the family, if not for the protection of our local economy, then who and what exactly are we paying our elected officials to represent? Please consider the impact of your decision here today and vote no on the setback. Thank you.
California oil imports have increased nearly tenfold since '02. Foreign nations like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Russia now provide about half of our oil. Most countries who California imports its oil from have limited environmental regulations, not to mention deplorable human rights records. California, on the other hand, has some of the most stringent environmental standards for the production, storage, and sale of gas and oil production in the entire world. Though generally the economy may be moving towards renewables, until the day-to-day infrastructure of our society has accommodated them, then we have to think practically about implications of major decisions like this. I think Governor Brown put it best when he said, the most responsible solution is to produce the oil needed here in California. Thank you. Thank you.
If our local government decides to approve a 2,500-foot setback, there are going to be serious consequences for my family. People like myself who live in Southern California are already feeling the effect of high gas prices at the pump. If we eliminate 100,000 plus jobs from LA County, stab local fuel production in the neck, and ask environmentally insensitive countries like Russia and Saudi Arabia to satisfy our oil and gas needs, are we doing LA families any favors about any of this? How about our economy? How about the environment? What exactly is supposed to benefit from the shutdown? The mothers who are responsible for getting their families to where life takes them, as well as wives who depend on their husbands for stability. We're asking you today, the PUM committee, to be sensitive, do the responsible thing, and vote against the shutdown. Thank you for your time.
Berman?
For the record, I did submit an additional card, but it wasn't called. But as you hear today, the mitigated declaration, people are getting fucking tired of these broken promises through zone change. And what you're creating is havoc in neighborhoods where you're creating density issues, parking problems, and worst case scenario, homelessness. People cannot afford to live in a 3-fucking-story building with medium to residential, low, medium to residential incomes. You either have poor and the rich. Otherwise, we can't live in an area like in CD12 where a bunch of pussies run that CD. And if the pussies don't stand up for other people's rights, what can the pussy Englander do to make it right? Pussy.
Thank you. That concludes this meeting. Thank you very much.